Back. This is our last segment of Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small. I'm co-host with Paul Ogden. We're Indianapolis attorneys. We're shooting this show at Big Hat Books in Broad Ripple, which is on the north side of Indianapolis. It's a marvelous store, 6510 Cornell Avenue. The G.C. Lucas Gallery is showing the work of Karen Chevalier Smith on the second floor of the bookstore here. Dick Wolfsey, who's a local writer and was on TV for years and doing different stuff, he has a new book out titled Moby Dick, Deep Thoughts from a Shallow Mind. He's going to be doing a signing here from 5 p.m. From 5 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, December 7th, and this is December 3rd that we're shooting this. I would recommend coming here to the store. It's a marvelous place. They've got space where you can rent for special occasions. Our guests on the panel today are Randy Miller, who is Executive Director of Drugfree Marion County, George Brenner, who is a clinical addictions. He has 38 years in treating clinical addictions in a variety of settings. One thing I want to point out before we go to the next topic is one of the other great things that was ever done on drugs. Doc Ellis, 1971, dropped acid because he didn't know what. And I read this today. Again, I wanted to go back over this and my recollection of it. He got the wrong day that he was supposed to pitch, so he dropped acid thinking he was going to sit in the dugout all day, and he had to start. So he just went out on the mound and figured, oh well, I'm going to get jerked after an inning or two. I could hit out of the box. By the sixth inning, his teammates were like moving away from him in the dugout because there's like a thing about no-hitters. He didn't realize he was throwing a no-hitter, and he had gotten into a really heavy groove that day pitching, and he pitched a no-hitter doing acid, which if the coaches of the major leagues had known about it at the time, probably would have been dishing out acid before they were dishing out steroids and human growth hormone and stuff like that. So, Paul, you were wanting to address a couple of issues.
Well, a couple of issues. One is, as an attorney, I've done a lot of work in the area of civil forfeiture. The current prosecutor, or the former prosecutor, Carl Brizzi, pretty much limited to drug offenses. The current prosecutor has expanded it to virtually every type of crime. And we're seeing situations where, with drugs being illegal, police officers will go in, they will take TVs, they will take money, they will take vehicles, and basically throw, and they don't even have to actually charge you with a crime. And they'll throw that into the civil arena, and you basically have to go in and prove that you're not committing any kind of crime. And that money, we did a study, and over a 3-year period, what happens is the money is supposed to go to law enforcement costs with the balance going to the schools. We suspected that the money wasn't actually going to the schools, and that was confirmed. We did a 3-year study, and they paid, I think, $98,000. 92 counties have paid $98,000 in civil forfeiture in 3 years. Marion County's paid nothing. All the big counties, virtually all the big counties have paid nothing. So, and that's a bigger issue than what we're talking about today. That's a show in and of itself. One thing, though, so it is a profit center for police right now, the drugs being illegal. But one of the areas I wanted to get into was the area of the new synthetic type drugs. I read about they actually selling these apparently on eBay and other places, incense that apparently has some type of synthetic drugs. So I kind of want to get the perspective from you to what's going on out there. And is it affecting younger kids, and what can be done about it, if anything?
Yeah, recently you may have seen there was actually a news story here locally of a young girl videotaped Noblesville, if I remember correctly, in the emergency room. I think it was videotaped by her parents while she's in the emergency room. That was picked up by one of the local news stations here using what's called bath salts. Bath salts is a synthetic hallucinogen like LSD type of...
It's called bath salts?
That's what they call it. It's one of the names.
Yeah, you wouldn't go to Bath
It's not like, obviously the name's a complete misnomer. But she's sitting there rocking back and forth, and she's sitting in the waiting room, and then they had a video of another young man in the back seat, I think maybe of a squad car, not from Noblesville, but he was intermittently going from smiling and laughing to like this, and then his paranoid look, and so and these are teenagers in this case that are doing this. A similar substance, a synthetic substance, K2 spice, which has other names. These all have different names, and they often are designed as, in fact, K2 spice will say on it, not for human consumption. Nonetheless, when you talk to someone in one of the head shops and you ask about it, they'll tell you exactly what happens when you smoke it.
What's a head shop? Just so our viewers will know.
Our head shop is a place where you can get things that can help you. Drug paraphernalia. How's that? Okay, yeah, I was trying not to use that word, but yes, drug paraphernalia and other sundry similar type of items.
Which I don't think by itself is illegal. But
no. Promotional items, your T-shirts and all this stuff come along with it.
There's residue. Otherwise, it's only a novelty item.
But the one of the concerning things about this, youth are getting it. It's for sale in convenience stores now. You can get these things other than outside of the head shops where you're supposed to be legal age even to go into those to get those. So it's there where these, and that's where this girl said she or some of her friends had gotten these bath salts that she took. They are dangerous because there's no regulation, and so what we're finding is, for example, 3 boys in Texas recently, 3 15, 16-year-old boys, all ended up in the emergency room because they had had a mild heart attack after taking, it was either bath salts or spice, but somebody had added something into it that caused all of them to have this kind of reaction. The other thing that's disturbing about it is that there was a law that was passed July 1st of this year that banned the components, the chemical components in both spice and bath salts and derivatives of those. But they're manufactured synthetic drugs, so what we hear is not happening is the manufacturers are tweaking the components and ingredients enough to sort of now say that they're illegal. Now, we haven't yet studied them enough to know that is true.
There's actually a statute on that before, and I had a Court of Appeals case because someone was arrested for possession of khat, which is it's a plant grown like on the Horn of Africa, and it's used in Yemen and Ethiopia and Somalia a lot, like people use coffee here. Yeah. I mean, it's that 70% of the population uses it on a daily basis. But our statute here in Indiana says that what we call designer drugs, even if they design around it, and I want to ask you a question about this in a second, even if they design around it, if it is similar to the drug in question, but has the same or slightly greater pharmacological effects, then it's illegal. The same as the drug that it was meant to get around. So they can do it to some extent, but they can get nailed. My question is, if you know, Randy, structurally, what are these drugs similar to?
In the case of K2 spice, they say it's mostly similar to marijuana. But again, there's been some very adverse reactions up in Lafayette, Tippecanoe County, earlier this year, an adult, I think maybe around 30 years old, something like that. One day woke up and found himself paralyzed from the waist down. Reported he had been using this on a regular basis for 2 weeks. And as far as I know, I don't know what the outcome of this is, if he's still paralyzed from the waist down or not. But obviously, you never heard of anybody taking marijuana that's had that kind of a physical reaction to something. So again, that's the problem with these is you've got folks manufacturing them and selling them, not knowing, I mean, and it's not all that, I'm not going to say it's all that much different than somebody sort of tampering with your heroin and making it deadly too. So I mean, that can happen with other drugs as well. But I think our analog laws, which is maybe what you're referring to.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, is what we actually, George and I are part of the task force currently meeting to look at, potentially in 2012, some legislation that will perhaps mirror another state that has changed the wording to get away from sort of the chemical, scientific side of it and make the wording to say more of something that mimics the effects of this other illegal substance so that they won't always be chasing our tail trying to catch up to the manufacturer.
When you get down to it, though, and we go back to a basic issue, is and I'm not trying to come up with some flowery thing about we are born free and everywhere we are in chains, but things should be illegal because they're intrinsically wrong, or they have bad effects for society, one or the other. And if they're on cost-benefit analysis, even though these drugs are terrible for people to use, and I don't think anybody would sit here and say that cigarettes are excellent. I smoked cigarettes for several years, and I can tell you that there's nothing more satisfying after a meal or certain other things than smoking a cigarette. But cigarettes kill 1/3 of the people who consume them. Substances should be legal because we shouldn't be making things illegal on a hodgepodge basis. If these substances in themselves are causing some harm, but again, there are things related to them like the illicit marketing and some of the other things we've discussed here today. I think even though the spice might have bad effects, if we have some kind of government control on the purity of things, some government control saying, look, this is what this will do to you. I mean, I can say anecdotally of one person that I knew who read extensively before he took LSD the first time. And that person took the experience very seriously and listened to some very good rock and roll music and had a very, very life-changing experience, I only know. But we don't have that kind of addiction, that kind of true statement of, with drugs that are illegal, because it's taught in school, don't do these because they're bad, and then you see like Dragnet film or something.
Yeah. The other substance that's on the rise that's legal but heavily regulated is pharmaceuticals.
Well, yeah.
And again, the question here is that, I don't know if sometimes I think that's an approach to take, because one of the things about if you make it regulated in the same way that you regulate other substances, if something bad happens, I get to sue somebody because they sold me a defective product.
Well, that's being limited more and more because the corporations lobby.
I understand that. I can't help that no set of laws or regulations creates ethical and moral behavior. And so we can't completely, but the idea here is that if we started to at least consider it on the same level as pharmaceutical drugs, you better believe there's a lot of testing that's done.
Oh, I agree.
To prove that it's safe, that it has an accurate, and that folks generally have some recourse if they are harmed by this, as well as I, as a citizen, have some recourse if I'm harmed by these substances. And I don't know if that's an alternative or not, but it certainly seems something, because it really does take it in the direction that I'm interested in. Is this is a health care, a physical, mental, and family health care issue that has huge impacts, not only in the families and people who are using it, but me as a citizen, because I got to pay for their hospitalizations, I get to pay for their accidents, I get to pay for all sorts of things. I get to pay for Department of Children's Services that takes people children out of homes. I pay over and over and over again. In fact, one estimate is that about 14% of our higher of our tax dollars go to the direct costs related to substance use.
We're about out of time. And I was reading one report from the Cato Institute that was saying all the billions that we're losing in cost-benefit analysis. We can get into that on at another time. Thank you very much for watching. This is Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small. My co-host is Paul Ogden. Our guest today for a very fascinating and very fun show, Randy Miller from Drugfree Marion County. George Brenner is a counselor for addictions. We've had a marvelous and most interesting discussion today on legalizing drugs. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the program. I hope we have another program again like this in the future. Thanks very much. Thank you for watching. Lumley has been our guest.